Orange is the New Black is where we dive in. Every episode we'll discuss, even the scenes that made us cuss. So follow me, join the spree. I try to space with 2 E's. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fans, please come on board. Susie's specialized in all these ideas because we make it everything truly as it is. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah. Oh, 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 oh.
Hello, and welcome to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a rewatch podcast for the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black. Every Tuesday, I'll be recapping one episode of the show with you, but please keep in mind that this is a rewatch podcast. That means that there may be spoilers about things that happen in the future episodes, so please be warned. This is definitely a spoiler zone. On today's episode of our Orange is the New Black rewatch, we will be discussing Season 1, Episode 7, titled Blood Donut. The IMDb synopsis for this episode says, former high school track star Janae Watson returns from solitary confinement. Piper wants to reopen the outdoor track, but Healy forces her to fulfill several potentially dangerous tasks before he will consider it. Alex's teasing of a religious fanatic named Tiffany Pennsatucky Doggett sparks a rivalry. So it looks like in this episode, we're going to be getting more from our girl Tiffany, and apparently Alex is going to be messing with her. The director of this episode is Matthew Penn, and this is the only episode of Orange that he directed, but he's best known for his work on the TV show Law & Order. You know, I bet that's how he knows so many of the actresses in Orange, since so many of them were on Law & Order as well. Sarah Hess is listed as the writer on this episode. She is best known for her work on the TV show House. She wrote a whopping 74 episodes of that show. Whoa. She's also written for 8 episodes of Orange, so we will be seeing her work again. And as I always say, I know that there's more than one person in a writer's room, so I'd like to give a shout out to the writing team. Thank you all for writing such a great show. You guys told the stories that were not being told, and for that, we thank you. IMDb rated this episode a 7.7, which is a pretty solid episode, pretty basic, standard. As always, at the end of this pod, I will be giving my personal episode rating, but I encourage you guys to go ahead and write your episode ratings in the comments so that we can get an idea of what we the people think is actually the rating on this episode. Okay, so let's get into it. The first thing that we see when the episode opens up is a prison van rolling back up to camp. We see a really sad and detached looking Janae sitting in the back seat. She looks totally out of it. So Janae has returned back to camp, and Morello is just letting her know that, hey, if it makes you feel any better, you didn't miss much while you were gone. Lorna is low-key critiquing Red's food here when she's talking to Janae and telling her what she's missed, but she quickly follows it up with, but don't tell Red I said that. She's got feelings like everyone else. That's when Janae jumps in and she's like, you know those good mashed potatoes that Red makes? You know, from the real potatoes and not the box? Do you think she can make some of those tonight? You know, since you're her girl and everything. Lorna's like, I don't know. Red kind of works up the menus a week in advance. I don't think I can get her to make something special tonight. But Janae quickly says, think about what I've been through. And I'm sure she's been through a lot. Solitary sounds absolutely awful. Lorna looks like she sympathizes with Janae, but she walks off and says, you know, I'll see what I can do. In the next scene, we see Alex and Nikki. They're sitting in a stairwell playing around. Apparently, Nikki has Alex trying to get as many saltines in her mouth as she can in 30 seconds. Nikki tells Alex that there was no way she was going to get 6 saltines in 30 seconds. At that point, Alex spits the saltines out directly at Nikki. You're a disgusting animal. Which is a quality I greatly admire in a person. At least you're in touch with your primal self. Alex says that it's her primal instinct that makes it so she can't resist the dare. When Alex stands up, she looks out the window and she sees Janae standing outside. She hasn't come inside the doors yet, and she's just standing there, arms wide open, just feeling the air and the breeze on her body, just, you know, just reconnecting with nature. It looks like she's just having a moment. She's probably very thankful to be out of the shoe. Exactly. Alex tells Nikki, get over here. You're missing a moment. So Nikki comes over to the window also, and they're both watching Janae. Alex says, God, Shu must really suck ass. To which Nikki says, man, she was in there for 2 weeks. I've taken shits longer than that. Which, I mean, I guess, but also 2 weeks is a long time to be in solitary confinement. And knowing the conditions that are down there, that sounds like torture, even though it's quote unquote only 2 weeks. In the next scene, we're in a Janae flashback. We see Janae as a young girl. She looks like she's maybe 12 years old. She's hanging out with a group of her girlfriends when a couple of boys come over. And they're like, hey, let's play boys catch girls. That's when Janae stands up and she's like, what are you going to do if you catch us? The little boy says, only one way to find out. To which Janae says, psh, go back to your mama. And her girlfriends are like, ooh. Now it's on. The boys are chasing the girls around the playground. But it seems like they can't catch Janae. She is out, okay? She's a very fast runner, and the boys cannot catch her. But instead of admitting their defeat, one of the boys says, Janae, quit showing off. He completely stops trying to chase her and runs off to go chase some other girl. He catches the other girl, and then they start, play fighting a little bit in the way that kids do when they kind of like each other. And Janae is just left by herself to look on, completely alone, which I think is some really tough messaging that she received as a little girl, having that kind of an experience where she can't be her best self because her best self is not getting the attention that she wants from the boys. And how that thought process might affect her actions in the future, which we know it does. It's pretty sad to me. In the next scene, we're back at the prison. It looks like the WAC Pack is entering Mr. Healy's office for their first meeting. Mr. Healy's very friendly. He has a big smile on his face saying, welcome. All the ladies have big smiles on their faces. As a reminder, the ladies of the WAC Pack are Taystee, representing the Black population, Piper, representing the white population, Maria Ruiz, representing the Latina population, and Chang, representing the Golden Girls and quote unquote others, which are all of the other ethnicities in the prison. So they're all in Mr. Healy's office, very excited, very happy. That's when Mr. Healy reaches into his desk drawer and takes out a box of Dunkin' Donuts. He calls it a small token of his esteem. Taystee says, dang, Mr. Healy, that's proper. All the ladies are very excited, especially Maria. She's very pregnant, so those donuts she is so excited for. Mr. Healy tells the ladies that if they ever talk about this outside of this room, they will never see bear claws again. You don't gotta tell Maria twice. She's like, Silencio, Mr. Healy. We're gonna be like Red's lady. What's her name? The one that don't talk? Norma. Maria says, we're going to be like 4 Normas. Mr. Healy says, okay, great. Now, down to business. Mr. Healy wants the ladies to tell him the concerns of the other ladies in the prison. So Maria starts. She tells Mr. Healy that the pillows that they have for sleeping are as thin as paper. She's like, sometimes yo necesito 2 pillows for ergonomics. Yo necesito meaning I need 2 pillows for ergonomics, as she rubs her belly because, yeah, when you're pregnant, you need, to be comfortable. That's when Taystee starts. She says, first of all, the hot sauce in the commissary is bullshit. She says they want the Thailand sauce with the rooster on it. Oh, she's talking about sriracha. She likes that hot, spicy. Taystee's next request is that she wants to get the book 50 Shades of Grey in the library. But Mr. Healy tells her there's no way that the feds are going to subsidize erotica. That's when Piper whispers to Taystee and she's like, I've got a copy. And Maria's like, I've got one too. So they both got the book. So I guess Taystee will be able to read it one way or another. Even Chang goes 50 Shade and does a little wink. Like, I got it too, girl. That book is all over the prison. Taystee should have no problem finding it. And she knows it. She says, I withdraw my request. She goes on to say, but Maria's straight up about the pillows. That's when Mr. Healy says, all right, pillows again. Chapman, you're next. That's when Piper looks over at Taystee and she's like, you're done? Taystee's like, yeah, as far as I know. Those are the 2 big things on my agenda. What you got? So Piper starts. The first thing she asks Mr. Healy for are clinic hours for preventative health care every week. That seems like a reasonable request. I don't think she's going to get it. but I think that is something that they should have. That would be great. The second thing that Piper asks for is that they reopen the track. And then she throws in maybe legal counseling for a little razzle dazzle. Meanwhile, Taystee and Maria are looking at each other like, is this girl crazy? She thinks she's going to get that. Maria starts laughing to herself like, this girl, she's so naive. That's when Piper brings up the GED program. She's asking that they get rid of the mold in the room so that they can have classes. Piper mentions that the inmates down the hill get classes and they're not even getting out anytime soon. It's interesting that she says that and she looks directly at Taystee and Maria, who, as we know, both get additional time over the course of this show. So that's an interesting foreshadowing moment there. That's when Mr. Healy says, Chang, you're up. Chang's like, okay, Mr. Healy, okay. He's waiting for a response. She says nothing. He's like, all right, lay it on me, Chang. She says, okay, and says nothing. That's when Mr. Healy says, good. Like, okay, got it. You got no requests? That sounds great to me. Mr. Healy says, we got a good list going here. Some good ideas. So that's when Mr. Healy drops the hammer and he says, well, while the list is good, we do have a budget situation. And it's going to be hard for me to get all these things done and still be able to bring donuts to our meetings every month. A little light bribery. The girls start processing, and that's when Mr. Healy adds, and coffee. That's when Taystee sighs, and she's like, well, we tried. Like, oh, well, we did our part. That's all we can do. So I guess Taystee can be bought for some donuts and coffee. Easy. As they're walking out of the room, Piper asks Taystee, what just happened? Taystee's like, you were there. Piper's like, hold up. We finally get an opportunity to make some improvements around here. And that's when Taystee cuts her off and she's like, don't be getting all Amistad on me, Chapman. Does Healy look like he's gunning for change? Piper's like, okay, but what about your campaign promises? And Taystee's like, everyone says shit to get elected. You ain't actually got to do it. That's politics. Damn. If that's not one of the hardest truths. I hate it when politicians think that way, but that is what we see all the time. She's not wrong. Taystee goes on to tell Piper that she has a disciplinary board meeting this week. And so at that meeting, she's got a good chance to go home. Taystee tells Piper that Mr. Healy even said that he would write a letter vouching for her. So Taystee explains that she's not looking to make waves. Taystee says, glassy water, smooth sailing right on out of here. That's when Piper realizes, she says, so this whole WAC thing is basically bullshit. And Taystee shakes her head and she's like, just take the donuts, girl. Like, take what you can get. We're not going to get all the things we want. Just take the donuts, girl. Which is also interesting coming from Taystee, knowing how she handles the riot negotiations in season 5. Does she just take the donuts? We know that she was not willing to settle then at all. It probably would have been better if she could have found some middle ground between just taking whatever and having that hard line that she did, not taking anything, if not everything. But we'll get there. We'll get there. In the next scene, we're in the laundry room. And as Alex walks in, Pennsatucky, aka Tiffany, is talking crap about Piper. Tiffany says, can you believe her? That college bitch thinks she can come up in here and take charge of shit with her nice teeth and her pinky stuck up in the air. Oh, Tiffany. It sounds like Tiffany's a little salty that she lost. Well, she didn't really lose. It was kind of stolen, but yes. Tiffany says she's got a surprise coming. That's when Alex turns around and says, is it a pony? Tiffany says, just shut your trap, Lurch. Nobody cares what's coming out of those slit-licking lips. So Tiffany also has a bias against lesbians, and it's coming out here. That's when Tiffany turns around and fake punches Leanne, and she's like, did you vote for her? She points at the other ladies in the room, and she's like, did you vote for her? Who voted for that bitch? Raise your hand. Raise it. Tiffany calls Chapman a Judas Iscariot cozied on up to the high priest Healy. She says, and Mr. Healy throws out my votes that were bestowed upon me from my lord, and gives her all the silver. That's when Alex says, okay, so in this analogy, you're Jesus Christ. Tiffany, completely serious, is like, I've been betrayed. That scene cuts, and then we see Piper in the bathroom stall. She's holding that little Nokia flip phone. She looks so excited, like she doesn't even know what to do first. Until she settles in for a classic game of Snake. When she gets an incoming text message, and it's a dick pic. And Piper's like, oh gosh, no, please, my eyes, my eyes. Someone knocks on the bathroom stall door, but Piper says, sorry, I'm a little backed up in here. It's going to be a while, as she happily goes back to her game of Snake. Over in Red's kitchen, Red is talking to Miss Claudette, and she's telling her how she tried to make her coconut cake, but Nikki apparently called it a cocoa knot. Miss Claudette chuckles to herself, and she's like, what pain did you bring down on her for that? That's when Red says, she was right. Your cake is inimitable, which I guess that's going to be our word of the day. Inimitable. It's an adjective that means so good or unusual as to be impossible to copy. Unique. Inimitable. The more you know. When Red tells Miss Claudette that her cake was inimitable, Miss Claudette looks at her like, okay, how you know that word? That's when Red says, Norma got me an Improve Your Vocabulary book out of the library. Red goes on to say, you've got to keep the brain cells working or they die. Knowing the path that she goes down in this show, I find this foreshadowing line to be very heartbreaking. But Miss Claudette responds with, well, you know what? To be honest, there's a few things I wouldn't mind forgetting. That's when Red tells Miss Claudette that Norma saw her in the library. Apparently, Miss Claudette's been looking over law books. Miss Claudette simply says, yeah, well, I have other interests besides just coconut cake. It sounds like Miss Claudette might be doing some research for her case. As Miss Claudette is cooking, she asks Red, where's her Mexican vanilla? That's when Red says, everything off the books lives like Anne Frank now, meaning she's hidden all of the unauthorized food and luxury items, you know, while things are a little bit hot with all of the guards looking for that cell phone. So Red pulls out a little key. She goes to the back of the kitchen and opens up a metal paper towel holder to reveal 2 taped up bottles of vanilla. So she's got contraband hidden all around her kitchen in the little nooks. Miss Claudette says, well, that seems like a lot of trouble. But Red responds, you get too comfortable, people take advantage. And then she puts her finger to her nose to imitate a mustache, referencing Porn Stash and how he came in the kitchen and did what he did last episode. Red doesn't want that to happen again, and she doesn't want it to get worse, so she's trying to be smart and hide her things. When that scene cuts, we're up in the ceiling with Piper and Janae. They're crawling through and they have flashlights. Piper says, well, at least it's better than Shu, right? I don't know why Piper feels the need to fill the silence, but she keeps going on about Shu to Janae. Piper says, I mean, the isolation must be terrible. Or not. I don't know. I've never been to the Shu. Piper can't shut her mouth. She continues and says, I heard it can be pretty loud down there with people yelling at each other all the time. Piper keeps going and says, when I said that I'd never been to Shu, did that make me sound like an asshole? Because obviously I didn't. And that's when Janae finally cuts her off and she's like, fuck Chapman. Like, shut up. Leave it alone. That's when we finally find out why they're up in the ceiling in the first place. Piper finds some broken electrical wires and says, oh, well, here's why the floodlights went out. It looks like a rat got to this. And Janae's like, oh, I fucking hate rats. So yeah, in the first episode, when Lorna says that they do everything around here, they literally do everything around here. That's why Piper and Janae are up in the ceiling, because they have to fix the electrical since the floodlights went out. When Piper goes to try to fix the wire, she gets electrocuted. And Janae's like, did you turn off the switch? Piper says, I thought that you turned off the switch. Piper's like, it's okay, it's my fault. Piper is being extra super nice to Janae. She's saying, hey, it's pretty cool that you're back in the rooms. I hope that they didn't put you with DeMarco because her breathing machine, OMG, it is so annoying. But you know what? I can make you some earplugs And she explains to her how she makes them. And Janae's like, yeah, no, I'm not with DeMarco. I'm in the ghetto. And Piper's like, well, that's okay. You know, you can use the earplugs there too. And that's when Janae realizes, she's like, Jesus fucking shit. Janae says, it was you. Piper's like, what? Janae says, the screwdriver, that's what. You're acting all sweet like a piece of candy. Nobody's sweet in here except for a reason. Piper's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she looks visibly afraid because, mind you, they're up in the prison ceilings right now, very close confined space where nobody can see them or hear her. If Janae wanted to beat Piper up right now, Piper would be in danger. When Piper says that she doesn't know what Janae is talking about, that's when Janae puts her finger in Piper's face and she's like, do not fucking lie to me, bitch. Do not fucking insult me after what you've done already. And Piper looks terrified. Like she is scared to move. Her eyes look like she's about to cry. And she probably doesn't know what to say. Piper starts and says, well, in my defense, I would just like to point out that technically, you did not go down because of the screwdriver. Technically, you went down to shoot because you got all up in Caputo's face. Which, true, Piper. That's true. But I don't know if this confined space is the place or the time to bring that up. Exactly. Janae's like, lady, we're in a tight ass space and I bench 140. Are you sure technically it's how you want to handle this shit? Piper, looking still terrified, says, are you going to say anything? Meaning, are you going to tell anybody that it was me who lost the screwdriver? Janae says, I ain't a snitch. So as they're backing out of the ceiling to go turn off the power, we're with Daya in the multipurpose room, and it looks like she's teaching the new CO Fletcher, how to play dominoes. When Bennett comes in the room, Daya can't help but smile at him, and he can't help but smile back. He's trying so hard to hide his smile because they're in public. It's very dangerous, and it's not smart to do that. But since he can't control himself, he just leaves the room as quickly as he came in. Oh, God. I don't like this storyline that's coming up. I think a lot of us in the fandom don't like the storyline that's coming up, but here we are. This is when Boo walks into the multipurpose room and she's got a dog with her. It's a beautiful white service dog. And as she walks into the room, she says, okay, bitches, who's first in line for some puppy lovin'? Which, ironic in the most gross way ever, but we'll get there. Lorna goes right over to the dog. She gets down on all fours and she's all in the dog's face, just playing with it. The new CO Fletcher comes over as well, and she's petting the dog, telling Boo how much it looks like her dog when she was a kid. That's when Caputo walks up and he tells Boo, well, make him do a trick. Boo says she doesn't know any yet. That's when Caputo says, well, maybe you could take some time off from sitting around eating all day and teach him something. Which, rude. And also, you're still calling the dog a him when she just told you it's a she. Respect the dog's pronouns, sir. Boo just laughs it off and mouths, fucking asshole. At another table in the multipurpose room, we see Piper sitting with Trisha and Taystee, and it looks like they're playing Scrabble. Trisha is telling Taystee that Chapman wrote her 3 letters for her case and it didn't even help. She's like, they ain't letting people out who hasn't done their whole time. And Taystee says, I'm training for this bitch and I ain't never coming back neither. Not like the rest of y'all. Oh, spoiler alert, I wish that was true. Taystee calls it the road less traveled. That's when Piper pipes in and says, you know, that actually doesn't mean what everybody thinks it does. Taystee says, oh shit, we about to get educated. Piper's like, I'm just saying that everyone thinks the poem means to just break away from the crowd and do your own thing. But if you read it, Frost is very clear that the 2 roads are exactly the same. She says he just chooses one at random. She says that it's only later at a dinner party when he's talking about it that he tells everybody that he chose the road less traveled, but he's lying. And Trisha and Taystee are just looking at her like, okay. It's like a silence. Piper takes that beat and she's like, so the point of the poem is that everyone wants to look back and think that their choices mattered, but in reality, shit just happens the way that it happens, and it does not mean anything. That's when Trisha says, I will probably kill her in my sleep tonight. And Taystee says, Wake me up so I can watch. Girls, that is a little bit morbid. That's a little bit much, but I get it. You guys are just over her. That's when Piper decides to excuse herself to go do laundry, which, good idea, Piper. Back over at the meeting of the dog, Caputo is trying to make conversation with the new CO. So he says, do you ever notice how some dog breeds sound kind of dirty? Like Shih Tzu, Cocker, Jack something. And he actually does like a motion of jacking something. Extremely inappropriate. And that will come up later. But CO Fisher jumps in because this is her boss. And so she offers up, there's also Poodle. And he's over laughing at CO Fletcher's joke to the point where even the inmates are looking at him like, okay, that wasn't that funny. Boo says, oh my goodness, guys, look at that face, talking about the dog. She's like, I'm going to call her Little Boo. So that's the name we have for the dog, Little Boo. When Piper gets down to the laundry room, she's like, hello. And Alex responds, it's closed. When Piper hears her voice, she's like, Alex? Alex looks like she does not want to talk to Piper. And Piper catches the vibe. She's like, I was going to drop off these clothes, but you know what? I'll come back tomorrow. That's when Alex is like, you know what? Just give it. I'll take it. When Alex takes Piper's clothes and hands her her laundry ticket, Piper says, do you remember the 4 seasons in the Seychelles? Piper's reminiscing about the time that they were in this hotel in the Seychelles and they just threw their laundry out into the hallway. But Alex does not look like she's in the mood to reminisce. She gives Piper nothing, no response. So then Piper rolls her eyes and starts to walk away. But as Piper does, she quickly rethinks it, turns back around, and she's like, hey, so I've been thinking about it a lot, and I just wanted to let you know that there are no hard feelings. She's like, I was pretty angry, but I'm over it. So, friends? Like, can we be friends now, please? Alex says, wow, that's really big of you, Pipes. And just walks away. Honestly, Alex has some nerve. You turned Piper in. She's saying, hey, no hard feelings. And you're like, yeah, sarcastically, that's really big of you. And you're not giving her the time of day? Really? Okay. In the next scene, we are at Mr. Healy's house for the first time. He's eating dinner in his kitchen with his wife and his mother-in-law. Mr. Healy is sitting between them at the table, but his wife is busy speaking to her mom exclusively in Ukrainian. So in Ukrainian, Mr. Healy's wife is telling her mom about how she wants to take a pole dancing class. But her mom, speaking also in Ukrainian, says, if you want to be a stripper, you can wait until I die. Mr. Healy's wife is like, it's not stripping. It's for nice ladies. It's for housewives. It's our exercise. Her mom says, that's what they tell you. And then one day you wake up in Atlantic City. It's at that point that Mr. Healy says, can we please speak English at the table? So that's when Mr. Healy's mother-in-law says in Ukrainian to her daughter, listen, you have 2 more years to wait for this green card. You can at least be nice. And that's when her daughter says, it's easy for you to say, you don't have to fuck him. Her mom laughs and she's like, I should be so lucky that a decent man would want to fuck me. And that's when she looks over at Mr. Healy and she taps him on the arm and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, English. We'll speak English now. And he smiles, looking appreciative, gives her the old thumbs up. Then Mr. Healy's wife says in Ukrainian, he's not eating. To which her mom says, English? Speaking English. She's trying to help out Mr. Healy and trying to get her daughter to be nice. So this is where we find out that it seems like Mr. Healy and his wife aren't in a real loving, committed relationship. I believe that she's literally a mail order bride that he found on the internet, brought her over to America, and now she's here waiting on her green card. But it doesn't seem like she actually has any feelings for Mr. Healy. And he's always trying to connect with her, but she's just not having it. She's not interested. Even sitting at the table here, he's telling her, you look very pretty in that dress. Actually, it looks like the blue one that he had Piper holding up. She does look nice in it. Mr. Healy's wife says, thank you, Sam. It is very... She's trying to find a nice thing to say. She's like, it's very blue. It's very blue. Over in another part of town, we see Larry and he's out with Polly and her husband. It looks like they're at a bar. It seems like Larry's feeling a little guilty for being out and enjoying himself without Piper. He says, we're sitting here, we're going to enjoy some small plates while Piper sits in prison. And Polly says, you know what? Fuck Piper. Great friend. She's in prison and it sucks. But let's also stipulate that there are children that are dying of diarrhea in Malawi. That doesn't mean that we don't get to complain about our lives. That's true. But it can't always be about you, Polly. But Polly's right. She says we're all allowed to feel shitty about things in our lives that are shitty. That's when Polly's husband says, yeah, and we should be able to be happy about things that are awesome, mentioning like Larry's column. And Polly's like, what? That's happening? Larry says, well, who can resist a felonious fiance story, right? So he's getting his article in the New York Times. It's happening. Back at the prison, we're in the ghetto dorms, and it's nighttime. Everyone's trying to sleep, but they can't because there's all this heavy breathing going on. And it's like, what is going on? Come to find out, it's Janae. She's by her bed doing burpees in the middle of the night, and everyone is completely annoyed. We get our first Black Cindy sighting. Black Cindy, aka Cindy, aka Tova, if you know, you know. That's when Black Cindy sits up and she's like, I know you ain't fucking with my beauty rest, yo. Janae's like, listen, they closed the track on me, haters. I don't have nowhere else to go. I ain't gonna get soft like the rest of y'all. Poussey basically says, if the COs catch you, you're going to end up back in SHU again. To which Janae says, I got 10 more minutes before the COs come back around, so let me get my time in. Cindy gets up again and she's like, man, can somebody get this bitch a hamster wheel? That line activated Janae. She's like, what you gonna do about it, Jemima? Those are fighting words. Exactly. Cindy's like, what the hell you just call me? So Janae walks up on her. She's like, I said, what you gonna do? Oh my gosh. And they cut the scene right there and they lead us into another Janae backstory. It looks like now she's a teenager and she's on the track team. It looks like they just won because she's holding a bouquet of flowers. Janae's coach comes up to her and he tells her how she did so great that she's going to be in the record book. Janae gets so wide-eyed and excited. She's like, is that going to help with scholarships? Yeah, girl. Her coach says, girl, colleges will be fighting over you. And Janae gets so excited. So it looks like the little Janae that we met put all of her efforts and all of her talents into her track running and it's paying off. So that's fantastic. She looks very happy. That is until she looks over and she sees some of the other girls and they're all cozied up with boys in the locker room. It seems like Janae is still in this position where she's intimidating to these boys and she's not getting the attention from them that she really wants. She looks kind of sad as she looks on at the other girls getting attention from the boys. They cut that backstory scene and we're back in the ghetto dorms. Both Cindy and Janae are still up, but now Yoga Jones is talking to Janae. She's telling her, the universe did you wrong. Then they took away your track, so I get it. Janae, forever with the chip on her shoulder, says, what are you talking about? You get it. Go on back to the suburbs, string cheese. That's when Yoga Jones says, I was like you once. Pissed off. I thought the world owed me something. It took me a long time to let go of that anger. Janae cuts her off and she's like, bitch, you're lying to yourself with this whole namaste bullshit. But Yoga Jones persists. She says, listen, you're a step ahead already. You're channeling your feelings through physical activity, which means your mind and your body are connecting, which is great. That's when Janae decides she wants to provoke Yoga Jones. She says, who touched you, yo? Was it your uncle? Your daddy? Yoga Jones says, okay, so you want to project your issues onto me. That's cool. But I feel bad for you. Janae just laughs. But Yoga Jones continues. She says, that negative energy is going to eat you up inside. That's when Janae says, man, you're this deep in this shit? You must have done something fucking evil. She tries to provoke Yoga Jones. She's like, why are you in here, yo? Janae points to Yoga Jones and she's like, did you kill someone? Did you fuck a kid? Did you kill a kid? And that's when Yoga Jones reaches behind and slaps the shit out of Janae. Janae falls to the floor and everyone in the dorm is looking like, oh crap. Janae's lip is bleeding. Janae wipes the blood and she just says, that's what I thought. So that's how we find out a little bit more about Yoga Jones's crime. Something about killing a kid, but we will get more details on that later. Everyone in the dorm is looking at her like, oh my God, you killed a kid? Yoga Jones looks really embarrassed as she walks out of there. In the next scene, we're in Mr. Healy's office. He's sitting at his desk and he's reading a Ukrainian translation dictionary. Looks like he's trying to learn more of his wife's language, which is good. That's when Piper walks into his office and he's like, so what can I do for you? Piper says simply, the track. Piper is trying to figure out an angle to sell this track opening up idea to Mr. Healy. She starts and she's like, how much money does this institution spend on healthcare every year? Mr. Healy laughs. Piper continues and says, walking for half an hour a day reduces the risk of anxiety, arthritis, depression, things like dementia and diabetes. Piper's like, it helps with everything. Piper says to Mr. Healy, if you could save money on medical expenses with something as simple as walking, why wouldn't you? That's when Mr. Caputo busts in Mr. Healy's office talking about, yo, preparation H. Rude, disrespectful, embarrassing. But when Mr. Caputo notices that Piper's in the room, he says, oops, sorry. He takes a step back and says, I'll come back when you're done taking orders. As soon as Mr. Caputo leaves, Piper starts back up again and says, sitting around all day is the worst possible thing that you can do for your body. Mr. Healy eventually cuts her off and he says, I got a deal for you, Chapman. Healy tells Piper that Caputo thinks that a CO has been putting pictures on the internet. But Mr. Healy doesn't really buy it. He thinks that's too dumb even for another CO. So he says to Piper, let's say an inmate is hiding a camera or a cell phone or something, and you find it for me. I'll take a look at opening that track. A little quid pro quo. But luckily for Piper, she knows exactly where to find a cell phone. But I'm not so sure if that's the best choice for her yet. We'll see what she decides. In the next scene, we see CO Bennett. He walks into the dorms and he's got a smile on his face still. Unfortunately for him, CO Mendez, aka Porn Stash, notices him smiling and he's like, what's got you smiling? Did you get laid or something? And he's like, oh snap, Bennett got laid, and he brings him into the CO dome for some guy talk. Mendez is like a young teenager trying to find out about his friend's first time. He's so overeager about Bennett's sex life details. Like, why are you all up in his business, guy? Don't you have a sex life of your own? But CO Bennett does not tell Mendez the truth. He starts making up a story about how the woman that he slept with was half Asian, half Brazilian, and how she has these fake boobs. Mendez is there hanging on to every single word. When that scene cuts, we're in another area of the prison, and we have Black Cindy, aka Cindy. We have Cindy and Poussey. They're here helping Taystee to prepare for her hearing. They're asking her test questions. So Cindy starts out with, Miss Jefferson, why do you deserve to be released? Taystee starts out, thank you, sir. And Cindy looks like, why is she calling me sir? Taystee continues. She says, let the record show. I only had 3 infractions for all of my time here. One was for smacking a bitch for not respecting my ice machine choices. And, well, the second one, well, they were bullshit. Also, I ain't never missed a day working in the library. That's when Cindy says, don't say working, say employed. The shit sounds more elegant. Poussey jumps in and says, also, maybe go easy on the bitch smacking. Like, don't bring that shit up. Taystee's looking at her like, yeah, you're right. Cindy continues and she says, all right, Miss Jefferson, what have you learned from your time in prison? Taystee says, learned? I ain't learned nothing. I came in this motherfucker innocent and I'm still innocent. Black Cindy says, you keep talking about innocent and you're going to slide back in here like you got a magnet up your ass. Then Taystee says, like a little kid, man, I ain't do nothing, as she crosses her arms. Poussey says, look, me neither, all right? We're all just in here because we took a wrong turn going to church. What you did or didn't do, that shit is irrelevant now. You got to show remorse, fool. Cindy says, tell him you met Jesus and you've done seen the error of your ways. And now you're going to help the underprivileged youth learn to play chess or whatnot. So they don't end up like your sorry ass self. Taystee says, man, I ain't sorry. Cindy's like, this bitch. Pusey's like, oh, you know what? Tell him you're going to college. Taystee's like, man, what if I did? What if I want to go to college? Maybe I do. But Cindy starts laughing at Taystee. She says, what are you going to major in? Ebonics? Well, that's not very nice. Taystee says, I could be a law secretary. True. I believe in you, Taystee. I think you could be a law secretary. Taystee would be great. Taystee says, the shit I learned in my job, I'm like Rain Man with that shit. True. Taystee is a quick learner. When Cindy tells Taystee to sit down, it's time to get serious. When Taystee sits down, the very serious question that Cindy had for her is, now what are you going to do about your hair? Which, that is a very serious question. Especially for us Black girls. We got to know what we're doing with the hair, especially for an important day like that. In the next scene, we're in the bathroom with Piper, and it looks like she's holding a stakeout for the cell phone. We hear Blanca in the stall talking on the phone. The only part of Blanca's conversation that they give us subtitles for is the part where she's telling Diablo, you better not get some puta pregnant. And then at the end of her call, she says, te amo, which I know means I love you. So I guess he's not going to get some puta pregnant. When Blanca comes out of the bathroom stall, she sees Piper, and I guess to keep up the crazy act, I don't know why other reasons she would do this, she takes a piece of toilet paper, rips it off, and puts it in her mouth, and really dramatically chews it up. Piper's looking at her like, what the heck is wrong with you? But she leaves, and Piper has her eyes on the stall. Piper goes into the stall, grabs the cell phone from behind the bathroom tile, and she hides the phone inside of her prison pants. And then turns around to flush the toilet for good measure so it sounds and looks like she just went to the bathroom before she steps out. As Piper's walking through the halls with a contraband cell phone down her pants, I'm assuming she's on her way to Healy's office. Apparently Tiffany thinks so too because she comes up behind Piper saying, oh, so are you going to go bounce on Daddy's lap? Talking about Mr. Healy. Since she's clearly jealous about Piper and Mr. Healy's relationship and the treatment that Piper is getting from Mr. Healy. Piper turns to Tiffany and she's like, what did I do now? That's when Tiffany shows Piper her teeth. She's like, have you seen my teeth? And she just opens her mouth up super big to show Piper her gross, damaged teeth. Tiffany says it's mostly due to genetics, but I'm pretty sure the drugs didn't help. Tiffany's telling Piper about how she has this cousin at another prison, and at that prison, they actually paid for her cousin to get a whole new set of teeth. And Piper's like, cool, congratulations to her. That's when Tiffany says, so it's fine that you're like all teacher's pet and all, but let's see what you can do. Meaning, let's see if you can get them to give me some teeth. That's a big ask, but can Piper get it done? We shall see. When Piper realizes what Tiffany is asking her, she's like, oh, you want me to help because of WAC? Well, I can't even help you with WAC because WAC is a scam. I can't do anything. Honestly, we all should have seen that coming. That's when Tiffany says, you think you're some kind of special, don't you? Let me tell you something, college. They're going to treat you nice and they're going to use you. And when you're all used up, you ain't going to be nothing. When she gets loud with Piper, that's when another one of the guards yells over to her, knock it off, Pennsatucky. Tiffany ignores that and says to Piper, you selling us out? For what? Like, what did they give you that was worth selling us out for? Donuts? Piper touches her stomach, thinking of the donuts perhaps. In the next scene, we see Porn Stash, aka Mendez, and he's walking into Red's kitchen while she's peeling potatoes. He sits down and says to Red, I bet you're aching to put those potatoes down for a few and make me a sandwich. Red says, not particularly. Mendez doesn't say anything. He simply pulls out his pen and goes to get his notebook, I guess to write down a shot or demerit or a strike against Red. That's when Red looks down dejectedly and she's like, I guess I'm making a sandwich. She stands up and she says to Mendez, what kind? So he asks her for a bologna and cheese with no mustard and double the mayo, which sounds gross to me. As Red starts to make his sandwich, Mendez says to her that this makes him very happy, and him being happy is no big deal for her. Red says, "What do you want?" Mendez says, "I want to be friends who take care of each other." Mendez is telling Red that since she's got her guys, the men who bring the produce to the prison, bringing in extra luxuries for the women, maybe they could also bring in some extras for him. Red says, "No problem." As she hands him his sandwich, she says, "Just tell me if you want zit cream or pantyhose." Mendez says, "I was thinking something a little bit more special." Red responds with, "Since when are pills so special?" Mendez ignores that and says, "I'll give you 5%. And Red's like, "What am I supposed to do with that? Burn it for heat?" Red tells him that her commissary maxes out at 300 and she has all the toothpaste she needs. She's prison rich. She doesn't need anything. He's not offering anything to her that's going to coerce her into doing this for him. Mendez says, 10%, final offer. Red says very sternly, "I don't do that shit." That's when Mendez says, "This shit, that shit, blue shit, bat shit, it doesn't matter what you do. It's the doing that makes you dirty. Don't play games with me, Red." Red says to Mendez, "You have no more moves. There is nothing in here. You can't even try to blackmail me because you can't even prove that I have contraband in here. There's nothing here. You got nothing on me." So that's when Mendez, the asshole, takes a whole big tub of rice in the kitchen, knocks it to the ground, and says, "Man, I guess things just got messy in here." Rude. He's awful. When that scene cuts, we're back in Mr. Healy's office, and it looks like Piper has given in the phone. Mr. Healy sees the VJJ picture on it, confirming it is the exact same phone, but he says that there's nothing else on it. It seems like Piper was smart enough to wipe it clean so that at least it's not going to get anybody else in trouble. Piper plays dumb and she's like, "I know people, right?" Mr. Healy asks where she found it and she's like, "In the trash can." He says, "Where?" She says, "I don't know. I just found it. Like, please stop asking me questions." Mr. Healy realizes what's going on and he says, "You know, I appreciate the fact that you don't want to snitch on anyone. The way these inmates treat snitches, it's ugly. But if you can't tell me who owns this phone, I'm afraid I can't help you with the track." Bro, that is not what you said. Why are you switching the deal up now? Exactly. Piper says, "That is not what you said to me. You said specifically," and he cuts her off and he says, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you heard, but unless I have a name," basically there's nothing he can do for her. And Piper stands up like, "Oh my God, are you serious right now?" She looks like she's about to cry. She simply says, "Enjoy the phone," and walks out of his office. On her way out, Mr. Healy says, "Nice work, Chapman." That was really mean. To put her in that position and then not give her what he promised. That's horrible. We are in Miss Sophia's beauty shop in the next scene with Taystee sitting in her chair. Sophia's telling Taystee, "I'm giving you 1 more minute to pout and then I'm shaving you bald." So it's Sophia, Taystee, Poussey, and Cindy, and they're all in the beauty shop trying to figure out how they should do Taystee's hair for this hearing. They're throwing out different types of hairstyles, like should she do her hair like Michelle Obama? But Taystee wants to do her hair like Monique's was on the Essence cover in 2008. To which Black Cindy says, "There's not enough hair relaxer in the world for that shit." Taystee's point being she's trying to appeal to a white board. But Sophia says, "Now what makes you so sure that the board is white?" Poussey is like, "True." Taystee says, "If there are brothers on the board, I'm gonna be free at last, yo. Cause ain't no black man gonna let a fine black woman such as me hide her light in jail." Oh, Taystee, I wish that were true. But that's when Cindy busts Taystee's bubble and says, "Fool, a brother is gonna be harder on you to show he got no bias." She says, "Shit, you better hope it's white people." Poussey says, "No, you better hope for white women. Y'all know how they love drinking wine with their friends, talking about how sad it is that black folks ain't got their fair shakes. Y'all know what I'm saying." They're showing their stereotypes. That's when Sophia says, "So you want to look like the black best friend in the white girl movie." Then the girls start rattling off those types of characters. Pusey says Taystee could look like Regina King in Miss Congeniality, or Alicia Keys in that Nanny Diaries bullshit with ScarJo, Scarlett Johansson. And then she offers up again Regina King in Legally Blonde. Apparently, Regina King plays the black best friend a lot. They're all laughing, and then Sophia says, "You're not thinking big enough. How about Viola Davis?" And Cindy finishes her thought with, "Eat, pray, love, motherfuckers." Taystee's like, "Yo, I gotta live with this hair." And that's when Taystee asks her for the 2009 Rihanna. The way Taystee figures, with everyone still hating on Chris Brown, maybe they'll throw her a bone to get back at him. We move from that scene and over to Caputo's office, where we see Fig drop Blanca's cell phone on his desk. Fig tells Caputo that Healy found it, and it's good to know that someone around here is on his game. Fig then turns to walk out of Caputo's office, but stops herself and says, "We both know you're after my job, Joe, but I'm not worried. Never have been. And you want to know why? Because you get mired down in pettiness instead of stepping your shit up." She leaves him with, "Nice haircut, by the way." But yeah, it's true, Caputo. That's a challenge. Step your shit up. Let's go. You can do better. Let's see it. In the next scene, we see Piper, and she's up on a ladder fixing a ceiling light in the multipurpose room. That's when C.O. Fisher comes over to her to hold the ladder. Piper looks down and she's like, "Oh, wow, thanks." C.O. Fisher's like, "Sure, no problem." And then she continues, "I keep feeling like I know you from somewhere." Come to find out, C.O. Fisher used to work at the grocery store that Piper used to shop at. That's when C.O. Fisher says, "Oh my God, I remember you. You were always forgetting your cloth bags, and then I would have to pack everything in paper. But then you would remember and get the bags out of your purse and make me repack everything." And Piper's like, "Oh boy, yeah, I guess that did happen a couple of times." C.O. Fisher says, "Every time, for months, you were a pain in the ass." C.O. Fisher goes on to say, "Who'da thunk we'd end up here, huh?" Which is kind of an insensitive thing to say. I mean, I know you're being kind of friendly. I don't know. I think that's in bad taste. But that's when C.O. Fisher continues and says to Piper, "Anyway, I just want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, you and me are the same. The only difference between us is that when I made bad decisions in life, I didn't get caught. It could have been me here in Khaki easy." Which, yeah, I agree. And we'll see that play out all throughout this series, where we hear of some of the horrible things that COs have done in their lives. And yet they're in the position of a CO and they're not in the position of an inmate. But they could have just as easily been in the same position. Everyone makes bad choices at one time or another. And so I personally agree with C.O. Fisher here. There's no room to judge anybody that's in prison. Piper appreciates the sentiment, and she tells C.O. Fisher, "Thank you for saying that." But that's also when Piper realizes that she can use this ally to her benefit. Piper goes on to say, "It's really nice to know that there's somebody on our side. You know what would really help to boost morale around here?" And the scene cuts, but we know what she's about to ask. In the next scene, we're back in the laundry room with Tiffany. She's telling the girls, "I saw that bitch heading over to Healy's office looking guilty as fuck. Guess sucking dick is a little easier than honest hard work." When she says that, Alex makes a face like she's annoyed, and Leanne says, "Well, I feel sorry for her." Tiffany looks annoyed, but she says, "You're right, Leanne. Compassion is what we got over the monkeys." But you know what? Compassion ain't gonna help this girl learn the way of things. I learned, we all learned, and that is that you have to get broken down to get raised back up. That's when Alex jumps in and she's like, "You know what? I'm with you, hun, really. Piper, I get it. Piper is a lot, okay? But I'm gonna need you to shut the fuck up about her and get over your shit." And she walks away like the badass she is. But Tiffany yells over to Alex, "Or what?" And Alex knows exactly what's going to get to Tiffany. Alex walks over to Tiffany, lifts her glasses up, looks Tiffany directly in her eyes and says, "Or I will fuck you." Pushes her up against the machines and says, "Literally." It looks like Alex getting all up in Tiffany's space and being all aggressively sexual with her has Tiffany feeling some sort of way. The next thing that we hear and see is Yoga Jones at the front of a yoga class saying, "And exhale slowly." As she's giving her class, Janae walks by and they share a knowing look, like they're apologizing to each other, but no words are exchanged. That takes us back to another Janae backstory scene where it looks like she's a little bit older and she's at a house party and somebody just handed her a beer. In the times of Diddy parties coming to light, it's a good thing that I see Janae here. As soon as she gets her beer, she sniffs it, I guess, to make sure that it's okay. It hasn't been spiked with anything, which, smart thing, girl. That's smart. That's when some guy comes up to Janae and he says, my man 3D wants to chat. So he brings Janae over to meet this guy. When Janae goes into the next room to meet 3D, he says to her, you're that track and field girl, right? And she's like, yeah. He looks at her for a second and then he says, you can't be here. Janae's like, well, little Frank told me to come on by. To which 3D says, little Frank is not a forward thinker. That's when 3D gets up and he asks Janae, look around, what do you see? And Janae's like, it's a party, there's people. And he's like, what kind of people? And she's like, I don't know, your crew. And he's like, yeah, we're thugs. We ain't finished school. We got what we got until the next bust. Janae's like, well, it looks like you're doing okay to me. 3D tells her, you're the real thing. Everything that we're playing around with, everything that we have, everything that we're holding, you can have it for real. If you want to fuck that up, that's on you. That's when 3D calls the other guy, apparently his name is Richie, over again, and he tells him to make sure that Janae gets home safely. 3D looks to Janae and he says, if you need money for sneakers or whatever, give me a shout. Janae looks like she feels rejected. Richie goes to show her out and she pulls away from him saying, I know where the door is. So once again, I guess in Janae's mind, she's being rejected by these guys. But honestly, I feel like 3D did her a solid. 3D is like, yo, you're about something. Please do not be up in here with these people who are about nothing. You can actually go out there and be something, be somebody. And that's fantastic to see, especially in this area where she's growing up. To have somebody that's looking out for like that is special. So Janae sees this guy in the hall outside the party on her way out. And he says, what up, Rocket Girl? Janae says, I got booted. That's what. So this guy says, well, 3D's got his own ideas about right and wrong, like he's Robin Hood or something. Janae says to him, and who are you? He says, if you want to party, I'm the brother that's not going to stop you, you know, because you got those thick thighs on you, girl. And Janae is just beaming. She is just so happy to have this male attention right now. Finally, some guy is noticing her. And not only is he noticing her, but he's complimenting her on the very things that the other guys were intimidated by. So he's busy flattering her and telling her how good she looks. He even wipes the tear from her eye. So with all that male attention, Janae is very happy, but is that male attention good attention? Because 3D was telling her that she needs to focus on her craft and do her thing to get out of the situation, out of this neighborhood, and to do better for herself. But this guy doesn't seem to care about any of that. All he cares about is the fact that she looks good, and he's offering her a beer as the scene cuts. So although Janae is glad to get the male attention, this guy is going to be bad news. In the next scene, we're in a bar with Larry. It looks like he's one of the last guys at the bar, and he's talking to the bartender, basically having a little breakdown. He tells her that she looks amazing and that he feels bad for even looking at her since he has a fiance. But he also feels bad because he can't look at his fiance because she's in prison. So he's trauma dumping all over this bartender right now, but I hear they get a lot of that, so I'm sure she knows how to handle it. Larry tells the bartender that Piper is in prison because she did something stupid and crazy and indicative of an ominously shaky moral compass. Damn. And Larry says as a result, he's stuck there alone at the bar, talking to her, enjoying it, and yet feeling like an asshole. That's when he says to the bartender, Polly was right, fuck her, meaning Piper. Then we're back at the prison as Mr. Healy is getting something out of the snack machine. We hear Caputo tell him, the track is back open. Mr. Healy's like, pardon me? Caputo says, I'm reassigning Fisher, 8 hours a week, her request. So the new CO that he likes, CO Fisher, the one who thinks that she and Piper are just the same, the one who Piper manipulated into getting her to talk to Caputo to get him to open up the track, that Fisher, the one that Caputo has a crush on, Caputo is now assigning her track duty 8 hours a week because she requested it. Caputo quotes the same health benefits that Piper was telling Mr. Healy about earlier, and Caputo was telling Healy Fig is gonna eat that shit up, talking about how's that for stepping up. Looks like Caputo is trying to impress Fig as well. That's when Caputo tells Healy that the idea was all Fisher's. Trust the woman, right? It doesn't threaten me to admit it. That's one smart piece of ass. Which is completely inappropriate as her boss. But we'll get there. In the next scene, we are in the ladies' bathroom and we hear Blanca and she's screaming from her stall. Like, no, no, no. Apparently, she's just realized that her phone is gone. Blanca walks out of the bathroom stall crying and comes face to face with Piper. But she doesn't know that Piper is the one who took the phone. So she just starts crying and throwing a huge tantrum, and she even knocks the stall door off the hinges. In the next scene, we see Taystee and she's waiting outside of the room for her hearing. We see the hairstyle she decided on. She's wearing a nice, neat bun right at the top of her head, and she looks kind of terrified. CEO O'Neill sits down right next to her and he says, if you make them wait, it ain't gonna help. Like, go on in there, girl. No time like the present. When she walks in, she has a very diverse panel in front of her, so I'm sure that throws her off her game. The black man in the middle tells her to have a seat. That brings us to another Janae flashback where we see her committing her crime. Remember that guy at the party who offered her the beer? Well, now it looks like they're at a check cashing spot robbing the place. The guy has a bag full of money as he and Janae run out of the front door. They go down some back alley and they stop to talk about, did you see that guy's face? Like, no, now is not the time to stop. Y'all should probably keep going. As they're standing there and start to open up the bag of money, they hear a police siren. And so they start running again. Janae is running way ahead of this guy and he's like, wait up. But Janae keeps running and says, come on. That's when the guy says, I said, wait up. Don't be showing off. You know, like the boy said on the playground when she was younger. So he tells her to slow down and stop showing off. And when Janae makes the mistake of listening to him, as soon as she slows down, that's when the police officer pops up and tells her to put her hands where he can see them. Meanwhile, the guy that she was with is behind the police officer, sees her get caught by him, and decides to leave her there as he runs away. I think it's really sad and tragic. And while Janae did get herself in this position on her own, she made these choices herself. I mean, it's just sad the way that she got here because she had so much talent and yet still was made to feel insecure about it. It ended up being that exact insecurity that got her in this position. Because if she hadn't slowed up for that guy, I'm pretty sure the police would have grabbed him and not her. So I do have a little bit of sympathy for Janae. I just wish that her insecurity didn't take her down this road. That backstory scene ends and we're transitioned back into the prison where we see a very happy Janae running at full speed around the track. Piper's there also lacing up her sneakers because as we know, this is Piper's happy place. As Janae runs by Piper though, she says, this don't make us even. Like, chick, this is cool, but we're still not friends. To which Piper says, okay. The episode ends with Healy walking up to the track and he's looking at Piper almost in a way that makes you think he wants revenge of some sort. He has a look in his eye that says that he wants to get back at her for going over his head or something. Something's not right there as the screen fades and we get our orange screen indicating the end of the episode. So that was Orange is the New Black, Season 1, Episode 7, Blood Donut. That episode received a 7.7 on IMDb. I liked the episode. I especially liked Janae's backstory because I thought the interaction that she had with 3D at the house party was really interesting. I like how he basically was trying to help her to stay on the good path that would help her to better herself. And I really liked seeing that happening within her community. Other than that, there weren't that many instances of the cast getting together in those big groups that I like to see. But what this episode does well is that it sets a whole lot of things in motion for the rest of the season. And it also had some really poignant lines that were foreshadowing things that come way later in the series. So I think that's definitely valuable. And I found those little nuggets to be very interesting. I also think this is the first episode where we're seeing Black Cindy. So I'll give it some points for that as well, because Black Cindy brings some fun comedy, especially in these earlier seasons. So it's fun to have her join the cast here. I want to take this time to shout out the actress who plays Cindy, Miss Adrienne Moore. Shout out to you, girl, because you definitely bring the comedy and even some touching moments as the series goes on. You do your thing with Black Cindy. So all things considered, I think I'll stick with the IMDb rating on this episode. I think I'll co-sign that 7.7. Sure, why not? 7.7 from me on this one, Blood Donut. But remember, I'm not the end-all be-all on these episode ratings. Please don't forget to leave your ratings in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about Blood Donut. Was this a 7.7 to you, or do you think it's a little bit higher, a little bit lower? What are your thoughts? Put them in the comments, please. Next week, we will be watching Season 1, Episode 8, titled Moscow Mule. So we'll get to know some more about our girl, Red. The IMDb synopsis for Moscow Mule says, Officer Mendez begins harassing Red when she refuses to help him continue smuggling drugs into the prison. Larry publishes his article about Piper in the New York Times, which turns her into a person of interest for inmates and correction officers alike. Piper's best friend Polly has her baby at the same time that a baby is born to an inmate in Piper's cell block. So it sounds like next episode, Polly's having her baby finally, and so is Maria Ruiz. Happy birthday, babies! I'll see y'all all back here, same time, same place next week. Thanks for hanging with me in Yadda Space. Don't forget to comment your favorite lines from the episode and let me know what your personal rating is for this week's episode. Again, mine was a 7.7, same as IMDb's, but what do you think? I would love to hear yours. So anyways, that's going to do it for this week's episode. If you aren't already, please make sure you are following the Yadda Space Pod on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, TikTok, so you don't miss out on future episodes. Also, like the theme song says, it's Yadda Space with 2 E's. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll catch up with y'all next time here at Yadda Space.
Hey, welcome friends to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda here, let's set the pace. This is a rewatch podcast, so let's begin. Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Taystee's wisdom sets the tone. Jose's heart feels like home. Nikki's got that quick one fire. Morelos love of love lifts us higher. Spoiler